When I first met Amanda, she was everything I had ever dreamed of: charming, intelligent, and breathtakingly beautiful. She had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world. Our relationship blossomed quickly, and before I knew it, we were standing at the altar, promising forever. I thought I had found my perfect partner. Little did I know, beneath that radiant smile lay a web of manipulation waiting to ensnare me. Our home was idyllic, nestled near a tranquil lake with water, so still it mirrored the sky. Amanda and I often spent our weekends on the lake, drifting in our little boat, talking about life, dreams, and the future. Those moments felt surreal, like something out of a movie. But even in the most beautiful scenes, shadows lurk, and ours came in the form of her mother, Gloria. Gloria was the kind of woman who never hid her disdain for me. From the moment Amanda introduced me, Gloria made it clear that she didn't think I was good enough for her daughter. "You're sweet, Ethan," she would say with that saccharine smile, "but sweet doesn't pay the bills." She always had a way of turning compliments into daggers. At first, Amanda defended me, shutting down Gloria's snide comments with a sharp wit I admired. But over time, something shifted. Slowly, Gloria's influence began to seep into every corner of our marriage. It was like watching a slow-moving tide erode the foundation of something you thought was unshakable. Amanda started echoing Gloria's criticisms. "Why aren't you more ambitious, Ethan?" she'd ask, her tone laced with irritation. "Don't you want more for us?" I'd try to explain that my work, though modest, brought me joy and stability. But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Our once vibrant conversations turned into arguments, and our weekends on the lake became eerily quiet. Amanda would sit at the edge of the boat, staring into the water as though searching for something I couldn't give her. I tried to hold on to hope, to remind myself of the woman I fell in love with. But every day, she felt further away. And Gloria didn't help. She was always there, whispering in Amanda's ear, planting seeds of doubt and discontent. It was as if she delighted in watching our marriage unravel. The breaking point came one evening as we sat by the lake, the sun casting a golden glow over the water. I tried to hold Amanda's hand, to bridge the growing gap between us. But she pulled away, her eyes cold and distant. "I need more, Ethan," she said quietly. "This isn't enough." Her words hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me gasping for air. I wanted to ask her what had changed, what I could do to make things right. But deep down, I already knew. Gloria had one. As I stared out at the lake, the place that had once been our sanctuary, I realized I was living in a perfect illusion. The love I thought was unbreakable was slipping through my fingers, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hold on. I didn't know it then, but that illusion would soon shatter completely, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a life I barely recognized. Gloria didn't just interfere in our marriage, she infiltrated it. Every critique, every seed of doubt Amanda voiced could be traced back to Gloria's meddling. It was as if she had built a second home inside our relationship, one where I was the unwelcome guest. At first, it was subtle. Gloria would comment on small things: my car, my job, my choice of clothes. "Don't you think Ethan could dress a little sharper, Amanda?" she'd say, her tone dripping with faux concern. Amanda would laugh it off or even defend me in the beginning. But soon, those comments started sticking. "You know, Mom's right," Amanda said one evening as we sat at the dinner table. "Maybe you should look into a better job, something with more prospects." I tried to explain to her, again, that my work in environmental consulting wasn't about the money. I cared about what I did. I thought she understood that when we first got married. But now, she looked at me like I was some underachiever, a man who wasn't living up to her or Gloria's expectations. The cracks in our relationship widened with each passing day. Gloria would visit unannounced, breezing into our home as if she owned it, criticizing everything from the furniture to my cooking. "Oh, Amanda, you're too young and beautiful to settle for such mediocrity," she'd say, her eyes cutting to me like daggers. The worst part was watching Amanda start to believe her. She began parroting Gloria's remarks, her tone taking on the same condescending edge. "Why don't you ever try to be better, Ethan?" she asked one night, her voice cold. "Why are you okay with just coasting?" Coasting. That word stuck in my chest like a thorn. I wasn't coasting. I was building a life, our life. But to Amanda, influenced by Gloria's relentless whispers, I was a failure. And then, the betrayal. It started with subtle changes in Amanda's behavior. Late nights at work, sudden text messages she'd hide from me, and a newfound preoccupation with her appearance. I tried to ignore the nagging suspicion in the back of my mind, convincing myself I was being paranoid. But the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how much you want to deny it. One evening, I noticed Amanda's phone buzzing on the counter. She was in the shower, so I glanced at the screen. A text from someone named Charles lit up. "Can't wait to see you again. Dinner tomorrow?" My heart sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was right there in front of me. When I confronted Amanda, she didn't even bother to deny it. "Yes, Ethan," she said bluntly, her arms crossed defensively. "I've been seeing Charles. He's different. He can give me things you can't." I stared at her, the woman I had once loved so deeply, now a stranger standing in our home. "So, that's it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're just done with us?" She shrugged, her indifference cutting deeper than any words ever could. "I don't know, Ethan. Maybe I'm just realizing I want more. Charles understands that." The anger boiled inside me, but it was the sadness that overwhelmed me. I had fought so hard for our marriage, endured Gloria's constant belittling, and tried to remind Amanda of the love we once shared. But now, it was clear. She had already chosen a different path. What hurt the most wasn't just her betrayal, but the realization that she no longer saw any value in the life we had built together. To her, I was just a stepping stone, something to be discarded on her way to something, or someone better. Gloria, of course, was thrilled. "Charles is a man with ambition," she told Amanda right in front of me, as if I didn't exist. "He'll take care of you the way you deserve." Their plan was painfully clear. Amanda was preparing to replace me entirely, to trade our life for a more lavish one with Charles. I wanted to scream, to fight, to demand answers. But deep down, I knew there was nothing left to save. Amanda had made her choice, and it wasn't me. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized I was no longer fighting for my marriage. I was fighting to hold on to my dignity, and as much as it hurt, I knew that letting go might be the only way to reclaim it. A week after the confrontation about Charles, Amanda suggested something unexpected. "Let's take a trip to the lake," she said one evening, her voice unusually light, as though the past weeks hadn't been filled with tension and betrayal. I looked up from the book I wasn't really reading, my brow furrowing. "The lake?" "Yes," she said, her tone almost cheerful. "It's been ages since we've gone out on the boat. I thought it might be nice for us to reconnect." Her words felt hollow, forced, but there was something in her smile that made me hesitate. Was it guilt? Regret? Hope? Or was it something else entirely? I glanced out the window at the lake shimmering in the fading sunlight. That place used to be our sanctuary, where we laughed, dreamed, and felt like partners in every sense of the word. Now, it felt like a distant memory, but a part of me, despite everything, wanted to believe her. "Okay," I said cautiously. "Let's do it." "Great," she said, her eyes lighting up in a way that reminded me of the woman I had fallen in love with. "Mom will come too. She's been wanting to get out of the house." And there it was. Gloria. Of course, she would be coming. That was the part that didn't surprise me. The following morning, we packed up the boat. A cooler filled with drinks, a basket of snacks, and enough forced smiles to make the tension almost bearable. Gloria was already in the driveway when I came out, her sunglasses perched on her nose and a smug grin that never left her face. "This is going to be fun," she said, her tone syrupy sweet but unmistakably patronizing. "A good old-fashioned family outing." I loaded the last of the supplies onto the boat, my movements stiff and automatic. I told myself this was a chance to salvage something. If not our marriage, then at least some closure. But as we pushed off from the dock and headed toward the open water, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling settling in my chest. The lake was calm, the water reflecting the clear blue sky above. Amanda sat at the helm, steering us further out while Gloria chatted away about everything and nothing. I stayed quiet, my eyes scanning the horizon. As the shoreline grew more distant, the silence between Amanda and me became louder. She avoided my gaze, her hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. Gloria, on the other hand, was unusually upbeat, her laughter ringing out over the gentle hum of the motor. Something wasn't right. We stopped in the middle of the lake, far from the shore and the prying eyes of anyone who might be watching. Amanda cut the engine, and the boat drifted lazily in the stillness. "Let's take a break," Amanda said, her voice unnervingly casual. I nodded, sitting down and reaching for a bottle of water. Gloria leaned against the side of the boat, her expression unreadable behind her oversized sunglasses. "This is nice," Amanda said after a while, her tone almost wistful. "Yeah," I replied cautiously. But then the mood shifted. Amanda stood, looking down at me with an intensity that made my stomach churn. "Ethan," she said, her voice colder now, "we need to talk." Here it was. Whatever this trip was about, it wasn't reconnecting. Gloria took off her sunglasses, her eyes sharp and gleaming with malice. "It's time, Amanda," she said, her voice dripping with finality. "Time for what?" I asked, my heart pounding. Amanda sighed, crossing her arms. "Ethan, this isn't working. You're not working. And honestly, we're done pretending." "What are you talking about?" I said, my voice rising. Gloria stepped forward, her presence suffocating. "What she's saying, Ethan, is that you've been holding her back for too long. It's time for you to go." "Go," I repeated, incredulous. Amanda's eyes hardened. "You're a failure, Ethan. I've tried to make this work, but it's over. Charles can give me the life I deserve, and you're just in the way." My mind raced, the betrayal hitting me like a tidal wave. "What are you saying, Amanda?" She didn't answer. Instead, she and Gloria moved toward me with alarming purpose. Before I could react, Gloria yanked my life jacket off with surprising force, and Amanda gave me a hard shove. "Goodbye, Ethan," she said coldly. I hit the water with a splash, sinking below the surface as the boat's motor roared to life. When I surfaced, gasping for air, they were already speeding away, their laughter carrying over the water like a twisted melody. I treaded water, my mind spinning with disbelief. They had left me to drown, discarded like I was nothing. But they had underestimated me. As I looked toward the distant shore, a surge of determination coursed through me. They thought they had one, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I wasn't going to die in that lake. Not today. Not ever. The cold water gripped me, sending a sharp jolt through my body as I struggled to stay afloat. For a moment, I couldn't process what had just happened. The sound of their laughter still echoed in my ears, mingling with the roar of the boat's motor as it faded into the distance. They had actually done it. Amanda and Gloria, my wife and her mother, had pushed me overboard and left me to drown. The betrayal was overwhelming, but survival instinct kicked in fast. I treaded water, my breaths shallow and rapid as I turned in slow circles, trying to gauge the distance to the shore. It looked impossibly far, the shoreline barely visible through the haze of midday sunlight. "Stay calm," I muttered to myself, trying to suppress the rising panic. Gloria's mocking voice replayed in my mind. "You're just in the way." Amanda's cold, detached words. "It's time for you to go." They had planned this. Every smile, every false promise of reconciliation, it was all a lie. Amanda's suggestion for a lake trip, Gloria's cheerful demeanor. It had all been leading to this moment. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that I wasn't the man they thought they were leaving behind. I took a deep breath, letting the familiar rhythm of swimming settle into my muscles. Stroke after stroke, I propelled myself forward, each movement fueled by a mixture of anger and determination. They thought I was a failure. They thought I was weak. But they had forgotten one crucial detail. I was once a gold medalist in swimming. Years ago, when I was younger and full of ambition, I had dominated in the water. Championships, medals, accolades. They were all part of a life I had left behind when Amanda convinced me that stability and family mattered more than personal glory. I hadn't competed in years, but muscle memory is a powerful thing, and right now, it was my lifeline. The water was cold and unforgiving, but I pushed through it, my strokes steady and powerful. Every inch I covered brought me closer to the shore and further from the betrayal that had threatened to pull me under. About halfway to the shore, fatigue began to set in. My arms ached, my lungs burned, and the weight of the situation pressed heavily on me. But every time I thought about stopping, about letting the lake take me, I pictured Amanda and Gloria sitting smugly in that boat, convinced they had one. That image ignited something in me, a fire I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about reclaiming my life, proving to myself that I was stronger than their cruelty, their betrayal, their calculated indifference. Finally, after what felt like hours, my feet touched the sandy bottom of the lake bed. I stumbled onto the shore, collapsing onto my hands and knees, gasping for air. Water dripped from my clothes, pooling beneath me as I sat back and looked out at the lake. They were gone, but their betrayal lingered, like a shadow hanging over the still water. I didn't have long to gather my thoughts. A voice broke through the quiet, a man's voice, rough but kind. "You okay there, buddy?" I turned to see a fisherman standing a few feet away, his weathered face etched with concern. He had a fishing rod in one hand and a tackle box in the other. "Not really," I managed to say, my voice hoarse. He set down his gear and crouched beside me, offering a hand. "Come on, let's get you up." I took his hand, letting him pull me to my feet. My legs wobbled, but I managed to stay upright. "Name's Tom," he said, giving me a once-over. "You look like you've been through hell." "You don't know the half of it," I replied, a bitter laugh escaping me. Tom didn't press for details. He led me to his small fishing hut nearby, where he handed me a towel and a bottle of water. As I sat on a worn wooden bench, trying to collect myself, he asked, "You need to call someone?" I nodded, accepting the phone he offered. As I dialed, my hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the enormity of what had just happened. This wasn't over. Amanda and Gloria thought they had one, but they had no idea what was coming. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to make sure they faced the consequences of what they'd done. Sitting in Tom's small fishing hut, wrapped in a scratchy towel and sipping lukewarm water, I started piecing everything together. The betrayal, the calculated cruelty, the sheer audacity of Amanda and Gloria. It all burned in my chest like a fire I couldn't extinguish. Tom sat across from me, watching with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "You're lucky I was out there today," he said. "Lake's calm, but if you didn't know how to swim." "They thought I didn't," I said, cutting him off. He raised an eyebrow. "Who's they?" "My wife and her mother," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. "They left me out there to drown." Tom's eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "You serious?" I nodded, my grip tightening around the bottle in my hand. "They planned it, took my life jacket, pushed me overboard, and drove away laughing. Thought I'd sink to the bottom of the lake and save them the trouble of divorce." Tom let out a low whistle, shaking his head. "That's cold. What are you going to do about it?" His question hung in the air, and for the first time since crawling onto shore, I felt clarity. I wasn't going to let Amanda and Gloria get away with this. They thought they could erase me from their lives like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. But they were wrong, so very wrong. "I'm going to make them pay," I said, my voice steady. Tom nodded, a glint of approval in his eye. "Good. You let me know if you need help. I saw enough out there to back you up." I stared at him, his words sinking in. Witnesses. Proof. For the first time, I realized I wasn't alone in this. Tom had seen me pull myself out of the water, had seen my condition, and that was just the start. I borrowed Tom's phone again, this time calling the police. As I explained what had happened, my voice grew steadier, more resolved. The officer on the other end sounded skeptical at first, but when I mentioned I had a witness, things changed. They told me to come down to the station, and Tom offered to drive me. As we made our way into town, I thought about Amanda and Gloria. What were they doing now? Were they celebrating? Laughing at how easy it had been to get rid of me? The thought made my stomach churn, but it also fueled my determination. When we arrived at the police station, I gave my statement in detail, recounting every word, every action, every moment of betrayal. Tom backed me up, his account solidifying my story. The officers seemed taken aback, but they didn't hesitate to act. "Do you have anywhere safe to go?" one of them asked as we wrapped up. "I'm going home," I said firmly. They exchanged glances, clearly unsure if that was a good idea. But I wasn't looking for their approval. Amanda and Gloria thought they could erase me, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Tom dropped me off at the end of the driveway, offering a firm handshake before he left. "Take care of yourself, Ethan," he said. "I will," I replied, meaning every word. The house stood dark and quiet as I approached, but I knew they were inside. My heart pounded as I turned the doorknob, the familiar creak of the door echoing in the silence. The moment I stepped inside, the tension in the air was palpable. Amanda and Gloria were sitting in the living room, glasses of wine in hand, their smug expressions freezing the moment they saw me. "Ethan?" Amanda's voice cracked, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Miss me?" I said, stepping fully into the room, water still dripping from my hair onto the hardwood floor. Gloria's face twisted in shock, then anger. "How? Did you think I'd just disappear?" I cut her off, my voice cold. "You thought you could leave me to die out there, and no one would know?" Amanda stammered, her face pale. We didn't mean." "Don't you dare lie to me," I snapped, my voice rising. "You planned this, both of you. And now, you're going to face the consequences." Their eyes darted to each other, panic setting in. For the first time, I saw cracks in their armor. The confidence, the control, it was all slipping away. "The police know everything," I continued, stepping closer. "Tom saw what you did. They're coming for you. And when they do, you'll have plenty of time to think about what you've done." Gloria tried to regain control, her voice sharp. "You can't prove anything." I smiled, a grim, humorless smile. "You'd be surprised what I can prove. Financial records, phone calls, your little plans with Charles. I have it all." Amanda burst into tears, but I felt no sympathy. Not this time. This wasn't just about survival, it was about justice. I sat down on the couch across from them, calm and unshaken, as we waited for the sound of sirens to break the silence. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by Amanda's quiet, panicked sobs. She sat frozen on the edge of the couch, her wine glass trembling in her hands. Gloria, on the other hand, stared at me with a mixture of disbelief and rage, her carefully constructed composure unraveling. "How are you here?" Gloria spat, her voice shaking. "You were supposed to." "Supposed to what?" I interrupted, my voice calm but cutting. "Drown? Disappear? Make your lives easier?" Amanda looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. "Ethan, it wasn't supposed to be like this." I let out a bitter laugh, leaning back in the chair. "Oh, really? And how exactly was it supposed to be, Amanda? Were you planning to mourn me for a respectable amount of time before running off with Charles? Or was it straight to the honeymoon while my body rotted at the bottom of the lake?" She flinched, her sobs intensifying. Gloria, ever the opportunist, stepped in to speak for her daughter. "This is absurd," Gloria snapped. "You're overreacting. It was a mistake, a lapse in judgment." Amanda wasn't thinking clearly. "Stop," I said, my voice low and steady. "Don't even try to twist this into something innocent. You both planned this. The fake reconciliation, the trip to the lake, everything. Do you know how long I treaded water out there, thinking about the two of you laughing as you left me to die?" Gloria's mouth opened to argue, but no words came out. Amanda buried her face in her hands, shaking uncontrollably. I stood, the weight of my soaked clothes pulling on my shoulders, but I felt taller than I had in years. "I trusted you," I said, my eyes locked on Amanda. "I loved you, even when you made it hard. Even when Gloria poisoned you against me, I held on. But this was the last straw." "I didn't mean to," Amanda started, but I cut her off. "Don't lie to me, Amanda. Don't insult me by pretending this was anything but deliberate." Her head dropped, and for a moment, I thought she might actually admit it. But then Gloria, ever defiant, spoke up again. "This is all your fault," she hissed. "You drove her to this. Your mediocrity, your lack of ambition, you made her feel trapped. If you had been the man she needed, none of this would have happened." I stared at her, my anger simmering beneath the surface. "You really believe that, don't you?" I said, my voice eerily calm. "You think your twisted logic justifies attempted murder? That your greed and manipulation make this okay?" Gloria's face reddened, but she didn't respond. Amanda sat silently beside her, a hollow shell of the woman I had once loved. I stepped closer, my gaze unwavering. "You both underestimated me. You thought I was weak, someone you could discard without a second thought. But you were wrong. I'm still here, and I'm not going to let you get away with this." The sound of sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Amanda's head shot up, her tear-streaked face pale with fear. "Ethan, please," she begged. "We can fix this. I made a mistake, but I still care about you. Don't do this." I laughed, a humorless sound that filled the room. "You care about me? You cared so much you tried to kill me. Forgive me if I don't believe you." The sirens grew closer, and I saw the panic in their eyes as reality began to sink in. Gloria stood, her hands trembling as she pointed a finger at me. "You'll regret this, Ethan. You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said, my voice steady. "I'm giving you a chance to face the consequences of your actions, something neither of you thought you'd ever have to do." The flashing lights of police cars lit up the windows, and a loud knock echoed through the house. Amanda jumped, her breath hitching, while Gloria stood frozen, her arrogance crumbling before my eyes. "I'd answer that," I said, gesturing toward the door. Neither of them moved. Finally, I walked to the door and opened it, revealing two uniformed officers. "Mr. Roberts?" one of them asked. I nodded. "That's me. They're inside." The officers stepped in, their presence commanding. Amanda collapsed into sobs as the officers approached, while Gloria tried to feign composure. "This is ridiculous," Gloria shouted. "We haven't done anything wrong." The officer ignored her, turning to me. "We'll need you to come to the station to finalize your statement, but we've got enough to bring them in for questioning." I nodded, stepping aside as they led Amanda and Gloria toward the door. Amanda looked back at me, her eyes pleading. "Ethan, please," she whispered, but I didn't respond. I simply watched as they were taken outside, their protests fading into the night. For the first time in years, the house felt quiet, peaceful, even. And as I stood there, drenched and exhausted, I realized something profound. I wasn't just free of them. I was free of the weight they'd placed on me, the constant feeling that I wasn't enough. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I wouldn't be defined by their cruelty, but by my strength to rise above it. The house was eerily quiet after the police cars disappeared down the road, their flashing lights and sirens fading into the night. For the first time in years, I stood alone in what had once been my home. My prison, really, without the oppressive presence of Amanda and Gloria. It felt like I could finally breathe. But this wasn't over. Not yet. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline still coursing through me. Their smugness, their cruelty. It had all been wiped away the moment those handcuffs snapped shut. Still, I wasn't naive enough to think this would end so cleanly. Amanda and Gloria weren't the type to go down without a fight. I opened my laptop, scrolling through the folder I had compiled over the past few months. Emails, text messages, financial records. It was all there, a digital trail of their lies and betrayal. For a long time, I hadn't known what to do with this information. Part of me had been too afraid to use it, clinging to the hope that Amanda would come back to me, that Gloria's grip on her would weaken. But after what they had done, hope had no place here. It started small, really, a few suspicious transactions in our shared accounts. Amanda withdrawing large sums of money without explanation, often after long lunches with Gloria. Then there were the emails I had accidentally stumbled upon, messages between Amanda and Charles that left no room for doubt about their relationship. "This arrangement benefits us both," Charles had written in one email. "Once Ethan is out of the picture, You'll have everything you deserve. It wasn't just their affair. Amanda and Gloria had been siphoning money from my accounts to fund their schemes. Gloria had even used my name to secure a fraudulent loan, something I hadn't discovered until weeks later when the bank called me about overdue payments on a debt I didn't know existed. At the time, I had felt powerless, drowning in a sea of deceit. But now, that evidence was my lifeline. The police had taken Amanda and Gloria into custody, but I knew they'd spin their version of events. They'd paint me as the unstable husband, the obstacle in their path to a better life. That's why I had prepared for this moment. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Richard, a man I hadn't spoken to in years, but who had always been thorough and relentless. When I explained the situation, he let out a low whistle. They really tried to pull this off, huh? Richard said. They did, I replied, my voice steady. And I need to make sure they don't get away with it. Send me everything you've got, the financial records, the emails, everything, he said. We'll build an airtight case. Between the attempted murder and the fraud, they won't see daylight for a long time. I emailed him the folder and leaned back in my chair, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over me. Amanda and Gloria had underestimated me at every turn, and now they were going to pay for it. Later that night, I got a call from the lead detective on the case. Mr. Roberts, I wanted to inform you that we've interviewed your witness, Tom, and his statement corroborates yours. Combined with the evidence you've provided, we have more than enough to move forward. Good, I said, my voice calm. The detective paused, then added, I have to say, this is one of the most calculated cases of betrayal I've seen in a while. Most people wouldn't have had the presence of mind to gather this kind of evidence. Most people don't expect their wife to try to kill them, I replied dryly. Fair point, he said. We'll keep you updated as things progress. After hanging up, I sat in the quiet house, the weight of the day finally catching up to me. This was far from over. There would be court hearings, testimonies, and likely months of legal battles. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life again. Amanda and Gloria had built their lives on lies, manipulation, and greed. They thought they could destroy me, but they had underestimated my resilience. I wasn't just fighting back. I was ensuring that their actions would have lasting consequences. They had tried to trap me in their web, but now they were the ones ensnared, and I was the one holding the threads. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose, of clarity. This wasn't just about justice. It was about reclaiming my life, piece by piece. And I wasn't going to stop until I had done just that. The morning dawned quiet and still, a stark contrast to the storm of events the previous night. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the sunlight streaming through the window. The house felt eerily empty without Amanda and Gloria's presence. But instead of sadness, I felt relief. The silence was a balm, a reminder that I was finally free from their suffocating influence. It wasn't long before my phone buzzed. The lead detective, Officer Hayes, was calling with an update. I picked up, already bracing myself for whatever came next. Mr. Roberts, Hayes began, his voice steady. I thought you'd want to know that we've officially arrested Amanda and Gloria. The charges include attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. I let out a long breath, the weight of those words settling over me. How did they react? I asked, though I could imagine it all too clearly. Not well, Hayes admitted. Amanda broke down during questioning. She's blaming Gloria for everything. Says she was pressured, manipulated, that it wasn't her idea. I scoffed, the bitterness rising in my chest. Of course, Amanda would play the victim. She had always been good at shifting blame, at painting herself as the innocent party even when the evidence was stacked against her. And Gloria? I asked. Defiant as ever, Hayes said. She's claiming you're exaggerating, that this was some kind of misunderstanding. But between your statement, the witness account, and the financial records, we have more than enough to proceed. Good, I said, my voice firm. I want them to face the full consequences of what they've done. They will, Hayes assured me. This isn't the kind of case that gets brushed aside. We'll be moving forward with formal charges, and I'll keep you updated on the court dates. I thanked him and hung up, my mind swirling with a mix of emotions. Justice was finally being served, but it didn't feel as satisfying as I had imagined. The betrayal still stung, and the knowledge that Amanda had once been the woman I loved made it all the more painful. Later that day, I received a call from Richard, my lawyer. "Ethan," he began, his tone brisk, "I've gone through everything you sent me. The evidence is solid. Between the financial fraud and the attempt on your life, they're looking at serious prison time." "How long are we talking?" I asked, my voice steady. "For Amanda, probably 5 to 10 years, depending on how the trial goes. Gloria could be looking at even more, given her role as the mastermind behind all this." I nodded, processing the information. It was more than I had dared to hope for. "And Charles? What about him?" Richard sighed. "Unfortunately, he's not directly implicated in the attempted murder. But the financial fraud? That's a different story. We found enough to suggest he was complicit in siphoning money from your accounts. The authorities are looking into it." A flicker of satisfaction sparked within me. Charles might not have pushed me into the lake, but he wasn't going to walk away unscathed. They had all underestimated me, thinking I was weak, disposable. Now, they were learning just how wrong they had been. The following days passed in a blur of meetings with lawyers, statements to the police, and endless paperwork. Every step brought me closer to closure, but it also forced me to confront the painful reality of what had happened. The woman I had once trusted with my life had tried to end it, all for the promise of a more lavish lifestyle. One evening, as I sat in the living room, I allowed myself a rare moment of vulnerability. The tears came slowly at first, then in a torrent, years of suppressed pain and frustration pouring out of me. I cried for the love I had lost, for the man I had once been, and for the betrayal that had shattered my world. But when the tears finally subsided, I felt lighter, freer. This wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning. Amanda and Gloria's actions had nearly destroyed me, but they hadn't succeeded. I was still here, still standing, and I wasn't going to let them dictate the rest of my life. The day of Amanda and Gloria's arraignment came quickly. I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding as they were brought in. Amanda looked pale, her once perfect composure replaced by fear and regret. Gloria, in contrast, still carried herself with defiance, though the cracks in her confidence were beginning to show. The judge read out the charges, and as each count was listed, I felt a small measure of justice being restored. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability, about making sure they faced the consequences of their choices. As they were led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, Amanda turned to look at me. Her eyes were filled with tears, her lips trembling as if she wanted to say something. But I didn't look away. I held her gaze, unflinching, until she disappeared through the door. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure. Amanda and Gloria were no longer a part of my life, and they never would be again. The pain they had caused me would take time to heal, but I knew I would get there. Because in the end, they hadn't broken me. They had only made me stronger. In the weeks following Amanda and Gloria's arrest, the house felt like a different place. The tension, the suffocating presence of their manipulation, was gone. For the first time in years, the silence wasn't oppressive. It was peaceful. I spent the first few days simply breathing. No calls from Amanda demanding answers, no snide remarks from Gloria about my so-called mediocrity. Just me, the sound of the lake outside the window, and the realization that I had survived. But survival wasn't enough. I didn't want to just exist in the aftermath of their betrayal. I wanted to rebuild, to reclaim the life I had lost. The first step was therapy. Admitting I needed help wasn't easy. I'd always prided myself on being self-reliant. But the betrayal had left scars deeper than I cared to admit, and I knew I couldn't navigate them alone. Dr. Harper, my therapist, was a kind, patient woman who didn't push but guided me gently. In our first session, she asked me a question that stuck with me. "What do you want your life to look like now, Ethan?" I didn't have an answer at the time, but it planted a seed. In the following sessions, we unpacked everything. My marriage, Gloria's manipulation, and the part of me that had stayed silent for so long, trying to keep the peace. "You've been carrying their expectations and criticisms for years," Dr. Harper said. "It's time to let those go." She was right. Letting go wasn't easy, but with each session, I felt lighter. I started to see that their cruelty wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of their own insecurities and greed. Outside of therapy, I returned to the one thing that had always brought me peace: swimming. The lake, once tainted by the memory of their betrayal, became my sanctuary again. Each morning, I'd dive into the water, feeling its cool embrace wash away the remnants of my pain. Stroke by stroke, I felt stronger, not just physically but emotionally. I also reconnected with old friends, people I had drifted away from during my marriage. At first, I was hesitant, worried about their judgment or pity, but to my surprise, they welcomed me back with open arms. They didn't dwell on what had happened. They focused on who I was now, and that made all the difference. One afternoon, I visited Tom, the fisherman who had pulled me from the brink that day. His gruff humor and no-nonsense approach to life were a refreshing contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. We sat by the lake, fishing rods in hand, as he shared stories of his own struggles and triumphs. "You're tougher than you think, Ethan," he said, casting his line into the water. "What they did to you would have broken most people, but you're still here, and that says something." His words stuck with me. I began to see the house as a symbol of resilience, not just a reminder of the past. Slowly, I made changes, repainting the walls, rearranging furniture, even planting a small garden outside. Each change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. One evening, I sat by the lake, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. I thought about Amanda and Gloria, not with anger or sadness, but with a quiet acceptance. They were a chapter of my life, a painful one, but they didn't define me. Dr. Harper had once asked me what I wanted my life to look like, and sitting there, I finally had an answer. I wanted a life filled with purpose, with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I wanted to embrace the things that brought me joy and leave behind the weight of others' expectations. I wasn't fully healed yet, but I was on my way. Each day brought new challenges, but it also brought new hope. For the first time in years, I felt free, and I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The day of the swimming event arrived with crisp air and a sky so clear it felt like a fresh slate. I stood by the edge of the lake, the familiar smell of water and earth grounding me. It had been years since I'd competed, but this wasn't about medals or proving myself to anyone else. This was about reclaiming a part of me that I had let slip away. Competitors gathered around, chatting and stretching. I recognized a few faces from my past, people I hadn't seen since my days as a gold medalist. They greeted me with surprise and warmth, their admiration a reminder of the man I had once been. "Ethan Roberts," one of them said with a grin, clapping me on the back. "It's been a while. Didn't think we'd see you here again." "Neither did I replied, smiling. When the whistle blew, signaling us to the starting line, my nerves melted away. As I stepped onto the platform, the world narrowed to the water in front of me. This was where I felt alive, where the noise of the world faded, leaving only focus and freedom. The whistle sounded, and I dove in. The water embraced me like an old friend, cool and familiar. Every stroke felt natural, my body moving with a rhythm I thought I'd lost. The world above the surface ceased to exist. All that mattered was the next stroke, the next breath, the next moment. By the time I touched the finish line, I wasn't thinking about winning. I was thinking about how alive I felt, how free. I pulled myself out of the water, greeted by cheers and applause. The announcer called my name as the winner, but the medal they placed around my neck wasn't the victory I cared about. The true triumph was the realization that I had found myself again. As the crowd dispersed, a woman approached me. She had a kind smile, her auburn hair tied back in a simple ponytail. "You were incredible out there," she said, her voice warm. "Thank you," I replied, catching my breath. "I'm Claire," she said, extending a hand. "I coach a local swim team. It'd be great to have someone like you share your experience with the kids." I shook her hand, surprised by her openness. "I'd love that," I said, meaning it. We talked for a while, her energy and genuine nature a refreshing change from the people I'd known in the past. There was no pretense, no agenda, just two people sharing a moment. Over the next few weeks, Claire and I started spending more time together. She shared my love for the water and had a warmth that made it easy to open up. There was no pressure, no rush, just a quiet understanding that something new and meaningful was beginning. One evening, as we sat by the lake, I told her everything. The betrayal, the struggle, the journey to reclaim my life. She listened without judgment, her hand resting gently on mine. "You've been through so much," she said softly, "but the fact that you're here, stronger than ever, says everything about who you are." Her words stayed with me. Life didn't magically become perfect, but it became mine again. I coached the swim team with Claire, finding joy in helping others discover their potential. The house transformed from a symbol of pain to one of resilience, every change I made reflecting the new life I was building. Amanda and Gloria were sentenced to prison, their attempts to appeal dismissed swiftly. Charles, too, faced legal consequences for his involvement in the financial fraud. Their shadows no longer loomed over me. They were a closed chapter in a book I had no intention of revisiting. As I stood on the dock one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Claire joined me, her presence quiet and comforting. "You've come a long way, Ethan," she said, her voice soft. I agreed, my gaze fixed on the water. "And you're just getting started," she added, her hand slipping into mine. She was right. My journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. I had faced the depths of betrayal and come out stronger, not because of what I had lost, but because of what I had found. Strength, purpose, and the courage to move forward. As the stars began to dot the night sky, I took a deep breath, feeling the cool breeze against my skin. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. I was looking ahead, to a future filled with promise, love, and the freedom to be exactly who I was meant to be. And it felt incredible.